The way of mastery. Do you know the way of mastery, people? Have you got any idea what that means? This book is about self-mastery. Only it's coming from the vantage that you're being spoken to by Jesus. And Jesus is the Son of God, and there is a heaven, and everyone will live happily ever after when they vacate this dimension. So there's all that going on, and Jesus in here speaking about suffering and the burden of the cross and all those sort of metaphors. But over and above that, what the rhetoric is that Jesus potentially is living in every one of us. And all we have to do is open our hearts and love him, it, open ourselves to the whole notion of Daddy in the sky sending his son to earth and all this. So it's a story. We open ourselves up to a story. It's an illustration. Just like Jeshua ben Joseph was said to have spoken in whilst he was teaching. Illustrations. So just telling stories. The whole nativity play about baby Jesus born in the manger and all that sort of stuff. Stories. Now, when we look into history, we can see that that particular story was plagiarized from hundreds of other stories all over the globe throughout thousands and thousands of years. There's been a simple format, a blueprint to the God being born of a virgin and three kings going to visit them and all this different sorts of stuff. You can read many accounts of a very similar thing with you know, the let's say the Greek gods, the Hindu gods, the Zoroastrian gods, any gods you can ever imagine. For some reason, some bizarre reason, they've had this virgin birth. Because they've wanted to instill that this is a level of purity that you don't possess. And so, therefore, it's easier to follow something that isn't human as we know it. Even though Jesus is said to have came in the human form, he was God. And he was a light being, and he only was Jesus on earth for a short period of time. And then he went back to being what he always was. But then we're told that we'll go back to being what we always were as well. So then we ask ourselves, well, there's no difference then, is there, between the fiction of Jesus and what we are? And if we are going to go to heaven, then Jesus went to heaven. So what's the difference? There's no difference, people. It's all stories. And if you look around and if you ask yourselves, well, I believe in Jesus and Jesus is true. Well, you go, okay, well, let's have a look at another culture then. Just project your mind, if at all possible, if you can get out of that tiny little perspective of who you think you are. If you can go into another country, if you can land yourself in, say, like Mali in Africa, if you can go to Kuala Lumpur in Indonesia, if you can land yourself in, let's say, somewhere in the Middle East like Kuwait or Iraq or Afghanistan, and then take yourself over to, let's say, Australia, to the Aborigines and what gods they believe in. Goodness me, you'll go, well, all these human beings all over the world forever have invented gods. And many have stole the story or parts of it from other cultures and scriptures, and then they've just made their story up. And they're all preposterous, they're all very irrational, they're all premised on faith, just blind belief. And so what do we make of that? as rational people, what we make of that people is that the human being likes to tell stories, and the human being is much more comfortable with fantasy stories than they are any sort of reality. If you've got someone like, let's say, Joseph Smith, who supposedly was a modern day prophet, well, nothing like as popular as any of the other religions, because like, oh, that was a man, you know, and a man of modern times, that don't cut it. He never walked on water, he never rose the dead, he never did any of this. No, he's not the God for me. That's not fantastic enough. We need a level of fantasy to take us outside of the harsh reality. Otherwise it doesn't comfort us. Nothing from this harsh reality can really comfort us, because everything in this harsh reality is going to suffer. And you don't want to suffer, so therefore you believe in baby Jesus, and oh, if you love Jesus then you won't suffer anymore. And even if you do suffer on this earth, he'll ease your suffering, and it won't be as bad as it would have been if you didn't have Jesus in your heart. And then one day, when you do die, well, you're going back to Jesus in any case, and so, well, we can all go back to sleep then, can't we? We can all go back to sleep, people. So, you know, I can speak like this, and lots of you on this channel get it, but you realise, the same as I do, that millions, if not billions, on this planet will never ever accept the rational preamble that I've just espoused. They will never ever get their heads around that, and lots of them will want to kill you for even uttering it. And so we have to look at that and go, wow, the human being is a very, very dangerous creature. Very, very dangerous. How they only need you to contradict their fantasy, and they will actually want to take your life in the most horrible and violent of ways. And so that's what we're dealing with. But over and above all of that plagiarised fantastic nonsense that the human being has conjured up, this book touches on elements of something that we could deem to be closer to a reality, if there ever was a reality here. And what that is that Jeshua ben Joseph, speaking about the Christ, in this book, saying that the Christ, the Christos, is within you. And when we look at what Jesus Christ actually means, well, in Hebrew, Jesus means the saved, or maybe like God's Saviour, or something like that. That's what Jesus means. And then Christ is the Christos, which means Messiah in Greek. So you've got one Hebrew word, Jesus, and then you've got a Greek word, Christ. And they've been amalgamated together because, of course, the Bible was written in Hebrew and Greek. And so you've got all this sort of mixed up stuff going on. And then over in the West, we don't question anything like that. We think Jesus Christ was a man. Well, Jesus Christ wasn't a man. Jesus Christ is two words meaning two different things from two different languages. The man was Jeshua ben Joseph. And so you can see that the vast majority of people wouldn't even know that. And it's just a can of worms, isn't it? It's just a can of worms. And so when we look to discover what these scriptures are all about, then we can see that the amalgamation and the mishmash of this language, that culture, these ancient mythologies, and you know, written over 1,400 or 500 years, spanning many regions, and being plagiarized from all different sorts of cultures. And you know, what Jesus was saying was very Buddhist-like, and it was very ancient Egyptian, and very Essene-like, and lots of different things in there. Well, of course, if you've got lots of different people from lots of different cultures, from different time scales, then they're going to be incorporating all different sorts of stuff. And so when you dissect the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, then you can clearly see what's gone on. And so you ask yourself, well, if it's all stories, then it's no different to any of the other stories all around the world, and these other billions of people that believe in their stories, like Vishnu and Krishna and all those sort of people, and Zarathustra. Well, why should we think that our fantasy and our story is the real one, just because you've been indoctrinated into thinking that? And you've never questioned it, and you've never learnt about the others, and you've never looked at the similes, and you've never looked at the plagiarism, and you've never looked at the nonsense and all that, and so therefore you believe. And that's why you need faith, people. Just blind belief. Just forget all about all the rest of the stuff that you'll ever learn. And in actual fact, the Bible is explicit that you shouldn't ever read any other book on the world. Well, goodness me, if that's not a propagandist at work, I don't know what is. So why am I speaking about this stuff? Well, I'm speaking about this stuff, people, because all this stuff alludes loosely to the epicenter of the cosmos, which, as far as we're concerned, as individuated shards of God consciousness, cosmic consciousness, we have a center. We feel a center. We have a consciousness which nobody else can share, and so we then consider that we are individuated shards of cosmic dust and consciousness and all that different sorts of stuff. But we can have experiences which take us beyond the ego, because that's the ego, and I've spoken about this thousands of times. We can have experiences which take us beyond that, down into the deepest levels of where the Buddhists come from, and they go, oh my goodness, aha, they've got this eureka moment, that well, it's all stories, it's all Maya, it's all make-believe, it's all, you know, kind of like illusion, not meaning that it's not there. No, there's something there, but what is there isn't what you think it is. And like Plato said, it's all ideas and forms in the mind. And many other philosophers and spiritualists have said the same thing. When you come back to this in an absolute still mind, well, there's a true essence which you can't get out of. You can't ever get out of that awareness. It doesn't matter what happens. Here, in this dimension, you'll never get out of that awareness at some stage or form. It could be a conscious awareness, or it could be an unconscious awareness, but the consciousness is always aware on some level. And of course, it has to be when we go to sleep and we're supposed to be unconscious. We're not unconscious, because there's part of our consciousness which is still very, very much awake, isn't it? And it's going through all different sorts of stories and this, that, and the other. And it's telling the body exactly what to do. Billions and billions and billions of instructions going on inside the body. So something is awake all the time, isn't it? Yeah. So, in this book, Jeshua Ben Joseph is saying that if you open your heart to love, using these metaphors, because that's what people have been indoctrinated into thinking. You open up your heart and you allow love in. Well, I've been looking long and hard at this concept of love, as you know. And when this dude is speaking about feel the love within you, I'm like, what am I feeling within me? At the very, very best, at the height of the human experience, I can feel something that is very pleasant. Is that love? And when I feel very pleasant, then I have a propensity and a tendency to act pleasantly and to treat people pleasantly. So could we say that could be called love? Well, that seems to me what people have done. You see? When we speak about love, when you think about love, what do you think? Oh, wonderful things. But have you ever narrowed it down? Have you ever really narrowed it down and seen if you could find that? And then you can say, oh yes, I find it all the time. When I'm looking at my cat, I love my cat. Oh, when I'm looking at my children, I love my children. And then you can go, well, when I'm on holiday in Benidorm, I love Benidorm. It's wonderful. Oh, I love my grandmother also, and I'm very, very fond of chocolate. I often say I love chocolate. Well, what do we make of this concept then when it's so broad? It's kind of like you like those things. And you like some things more than others. Would you die for chocolate? Would you die for your grandmother? Would you die for your children? Now, I think most parents, if the shit hit the fan, would die protecting their children. You wouldn't die protecting your grandmother. You wouldn't die protecting a bar of chocolate. You wouldn't die trying to clutch onto the sand on the beach of Benidorm, would you? But the chances are you would die for your children. And so what can we say then love is? If that's the only thing you would die for, that's the strongest bond. What is this bond? It's a genetic bond. It's an evolutionary bond, isn't it? It's nothing to do with what you think about love. It's something much, much deeper. And love is something you just project onto what you don't understand. So if you would die for your children, then you would die for you because they are you. And in actual fact, you consider that they have more value than you because they are a mini version of you, only they're a younger version of you. So they are more valuable than you because you've lived a certain life. And so you would rather die having lived a certain life and let this younger one live which hasn't had that life. So you pass the baton. That's an evolutionary thing, people. That's got nothing to do with Jesus and God and any of that nonsense. It's an evolutionary thing, and then we project this concept of love onto it. So when you delve deeply into these things and you look at it rationally, you can just tear an arsehole in these concepts. And yesterday in the video I tore an arsehole in compassion and pity and empathy and what was the other one? Sympathy, and all those different sorts of nonsensical words. They're just nonsensical words which go round and round and round in circles, and they don't actually mean anything. And they can never be defined definitively, and so they are basically useless when we scrutinize them. Language is useless when we scrutinize it, because it's a shapeshifter. And so, but what this book does do, when it's talking about let me into your heart, well, if you like a story, and if you like the idea of this pretty gentle man whose shit didn't smell, and, you know, he never appeared to have sex, and so he was a virgin, because it's very important that our leaders, you know, our gods are virgins. They must be born of a virgin, and they must retain their virginity, so they're pure. And they're not like us because we're nasty, and we've defiled ourselves with sex and all those nasty things. Oh, masturbation, wow, we ruined our souls from the very, very first thought of ever masturbating, didn't we? And so therefore we need our gods to be virgins. Good God, can you see how this shit works, people? It's just a level of purity and innocence. And so the baby Jesus, oh wow, the baby Jesus, well, that's the height of the height, isn't it? It's the dizziest heights of purity, that is. No conception or no possibility of a baby not being a virgin, so it's absolutely pure. That's what we want. We want to worship pureness. And this is why all over the world these sacrifices have been with babies, because there's something that the human being has about being defiled by sex, and you become worthless after you've had sex for some fucking unfathomable reason. So, if we try to look at what Jesus is saying in this book, Yeshua ben Joseph, that you find me, you open your heart to me. Well, okay, well, the Muslims, they open their heart to Muhammad, and they open their heart to Allah. And if you look at the Hindus, then they open their hearts up to Krishna, or fucking Ganesh, or Shiva, or what the fuck, you know, hundreds of varieties of gods. And if you told them about, oh, Jesus is the real God, they'll go, what are you talking about? Our God's been our God for thousands of years before Jesus was even a fucking twinkle in fucking Mary and Joseph's eye. You know, so don't be talking to us about Jesus is God. And anyway, you've plagiarised that from the fucking birth of Krishna, because Krishna was born of a virgin and three kings went to see Krishna. And so you take your silly Jesus Christos and stick it up your asses. So this is a reality. This is a reality, people. And so when all these gods say, oh, find me in your heart, well, they're all proclaiming to be love. They all reckon they're love. Oh, I'm love. They're all like Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. They're all fucking Spartacus, aren't they? They're all selling the same fucking dream, people. So if you look around you and you go, wow, all these cunts selling this fucking dream, well, it seems like it's just stories then. So what can I find which is in me, which is pertaining to these stories, is the love that they have for us, and when we have it for them, oh well, everything's fan-dabby-dozy. So, well, I wonder if I could find this love in me without them. Let's just say cut the middleman out. Let's cut all the middlemen out. All over the world, we cut out all of these 4,000 gods, right? We cut them all out, and then we see what's left. Oh, lo and behold, we're left, and there's something in our breast, and it's called a heart, and it's supposed to emanate love. Well, let's just look in, let's see if we can nurture that, let's see if we can water the proverbial garden and enable our love to flourish. Well, if you think nice pretty things all the time, and you don't judge and criticize and have an issue, blah blah blah, it goes on in this book to say that the way of the heart is called. The way of the heart is to release yourself from judgment, to release yourself from anything that's going to be causing you agitation, because what the book says is project love onto it. Love your neighbor, love your enemy, love 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 love. But if you just look at love and you go, well, if I change that word love, and if I go just forget, then let's just forget. Okay, I'll supplant forget instead of love. So if I forget about my enemies, and I forget about my jealousy, and I forget about my envy, and I forget about all the nasty meanies out there, and I forget about my poverty, and I forget about the nasty weather, and I forget about the war and destruction, this, that and the other, well, what's left? There's just an emptiness left, isn't there? And a still body. If you forgot about everything, you've got nothing to be disgruntled about. So there's nothing in your body which is going to be causing anxiety. It's like if we all became amnesiacs, and if we just forgot everything, then what a blissful state to be in, because we'd never have a problem with anything. So couldn't that be love? It could, couldn't it? But it doesn't sound as sexy as love, because love comes from the heart, and love comes from Jesus, and oh, the love of Christ, and it's coming into us, you know, like a beam of light, and I'm opening up my heart, and it's like an angel fluttering, and all the love's coming in. We generate every single thing in our bodies, people, and we generate them by the thoughts in our mind. So if you want to generate hate and evil, well, just fucking go ahead. You're free to do it. If you want to try to generate the best possible feeling and call it love if you like, then you're free to do that also. And you can then deny all the rest of the stuff, and you can minimize all the issues. But it says in this book, it says that, oh, you can invite me, love, into your heart. But then it says in this book, there's been very, very, very few people on this planet that have walked with love. Walked with love, being love, everything emanating from them was love. Well, ask yourself, how's that possible to be a human being? It isn't possible, isn't it? Is it? Because you're going to come upon, all different sorts of things. Some people are going to attack you. Some people are going to try and murder you. They're going to manipulate you. They're going to rob you. They're going to give you sexually contractable diseases, and they're going to do any number of things. What do? You just keep loving and loving and loving and loving. I'm loving. Oh, what a pathetic, pitiful state to be in. And how long would you last, really, if you just loved everybody that wanted to kill you, and loved everybody that wanted to give you, fucking AIDS or this, that and the other? Well, I don't think that would be a good fucking way to go. And so these people that walk the earth with love, there's only been a few people, crock of shit. And they've been Krishna, and they've been God, and they've been born of virgins, of course. And they were virgins. They never fucked at all. No, they never did that. They never even masturbated. God forbid. God doesn't allow masturbation. And so, well, you can see what we're dealing with. We're just dealing with a fantasy powered on a fantasy powered on a fantasy. But what I've been saying to you throughout this past 16 years is that you don't need any middlemen. We are it. And why is it that with 4,000 religions, they're all vying for our energy? They're all vying for our devotion. They all want us kissing their sandals. They all want us going to these synagogues and these churches and mosques and fucking altars and what have you. What the fuck is going on there? What is the energy behind that pretense that wants you doing this? Well, they're called religions. And then who's the power source behind the religions? Oh, well, they're called governments, and they're called nations. And why do they want the people to do that? Well, because it pacifies them. And then they're easier to control. And then, we can threaten them with things that they're not going to go to heaven if they start being naughty boys and this, that and the other. And you go, oh, I get it now, I get it. So look, what do, people? We come back and we forget about all these stupid concepts of love and hate and all in between. We forget about language and we go into meditation. Then when we go into meditation and we empty our minds, then within there we find this essence, which sounds like what they've all been talking about, love. Oh, this love, this lovely feeling inside that doesn't judge and it doesn't have anxiety. Well, that's just fucking isness. That's stillness. I don't call it love, I just call it isness. It's stillness, the same as what the Buddhists call it. It's just that level of what the cosmos is fundamentally, awareness. Before everything, explodes like a firework out of awareness. It's just awareness. And so deep inside our core, we can find this awareness. And when we're in it, well, it feels wonderful. It's exceedingly satiating. It's very, very nurturing and replenishing. And if we can spend an hour in that place each day at least, then we will be feeling much more content, happy, joyful, and we will be much more happier. And science has proved that meditation is very, very beneficial because it just gives you a fucking respite from the incessant madness of the ego. And so the ego, let's say, is hell, and the emptiness of the mind is heaven. So I speak about all this stuff in my brilliant book. And my book makes much more sense, much more rational sense than this book. You see, this book is coming from the Jesus angle, and they're using concepts and words and lies, deception, telling you open up your heart. The concept of opening up your heart is just a stupid concept. There's no reality to it at all. Love doesn't emanate from the heart. There's never been a fucking scientist on the planet that would say to you that love emanates from the heart. It's just a fucking pumping blood around, to be quite honest with you. That's what most of them are always fucking saying. And if there is a scientist which says, oh, love comes from the heart, then they're obviously a Christian one, because they've been indoctrinated into that. You know, this love, when you feel really, really nice, it's a chemical, people. And in my book, I speak about or asking questions like, is God a chemical? Because we can get into this beautiful state of ecstasy with certain substances. And what are those substances? Well, they're natural drugs to the body. They're serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrines and these sort of things. The things that flush our brain and our bodies with these feel-good, peaceful hormones. And so you take DMT, well, DMT is almost identical to serotonin, and then your mind is in absolute ecstasy. So it feels like God. And I've had feelings of samadhi without any of those inhaled or ingested entheogens, just with the natural chemicals in the brain, with the ego just going offline, entering into samadhi, the beautiful stillness and oneness. Well, DMT is very, very similar to how the world looks. Very, very similar. So it seems to me that God is a chemical. And so how do we know God? Well, we just calm the fuck down. We go into meditation, just like Jesus said, just like fucking Krishna and all the rest of them have advocated. Even the Kabbalists, the Jewish Kabbalists, in their Zohar, they are the greatest of advocates for meditation. You see, the Zohar is the spiritual, mystical interpretation by the Kabbalists of the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which is the Torah, apparently written by Moses, but fucking wasn't written by Moses because they're in completely different styles. And in actual fact, they prove themselves to be erroneous because they're speaking about Moses in the past fucking tense in these books. What a laugh, what a fucking joke those books are. So all this religion and all these fantasies and all these silly stories and this, that and the other, what does it all come down to, people? And this is why I'm always saying to you that I'm self-realised cosmic God consciousness. I don't need a middleman. I don't need no batty boy Jesus. I don't need no Allah. I don't need no fucking Zarathustra. I don't need no Krishna. I don't need any of those. I'm self-realised. I've used my cosmic given intelligence to look within and to feel within, and I felt that beautiful space, and I can feel that beautiful space anytime I want to when I just slip into a meditation. And that is heaven, and that is here, and that is now. And when I walk out into the world, I'm carrying that heaven with me in the natural world. But if I should go into the busy city with all these artificial things, you see, there was no combustion engines in Jesus' time. In Jesus' time, a horse and a fucking car would be the biggest noise you'd fucking hear, unless there's a battle going on over the hill. And so it was so much easier to get into the kingdom of God then. It's so much more difficult now because everybody's been distracted by a billion things. And of course the phones and the computers and the propaganda machine, the media and the pop stars, the movie stars, and the dream being sold to us about all the wonderful trinkets that we can acquire whilst we're here, all takes us out of the kingdom of God, people. It takes us into a living hell. And that's why we are all anxious and depressed and jealous and envious and bitter and tired and all the rest of it, because our mind is pulled in 1,000 different fucking places. But if we live simple lives, if we're just planting our own foods in the garden and tending our chickens and goats and this, that and the other, well, we'd be vastly closer to the kingdom of God. And this is what it says in the Tao Te Ching, written about 800 AD. So 1200 years ago, it's saying that if the human being wants to get closest to cosmic consciousness, the closest to harmony with the world about them, then they need to be as natural as they possibly can, without any encumbrances of anything remotely modern, which is going to be distracting them from working with their hands, bare feet on the soil and all that sort of stuff. So basically like primates. The Tao Te Ching is advocating a very, very primitive way of life, and when you live that way of life, then that is when you will be closer to experiencing the joy of what it is to be a human being. Because this Lao Tzu, which apparently wrote the Tao Te Ching, he was some sort of a government official at the time, and he realized that the machinations of the human being within these hierarchical systems was taking everybody out of the kingdom of God. And when he reflected on the people and the peasants in the villages, he could see that they were much more genuine, much more honest, much more open, much more kind, much less disgruntled, and all the rest of it. Getting into these cities with these new machinations of modernization just took everybody into the kingdom of hell. Out of the kingdom of God into the kingdom of hell. So what am I saying here? Ultimately, I'm saying, people, that you can believe in whatever story you want to. And I know there's viewers here, you're going to be watching this video right now, and you're all about this baby Jesus, and Jesus is my love, and I've opened my heart to love, and you've opened your heart to a fantasy, a complete and utter fantasy. Because if you ever just decided to do the test yourself and look for whatever it was that you considered love to be, then you will find that it's the stillness within your breast and the stillness within your mind. Once you've got those absolutely still, once the heart is barely beating, once the mind isn't even having a single thought, that's when you're in the kingdom of God. And then when you look at the world, everything is absolutely wonderful and beautiful, because you don't project anything onto it. But then when you come out of that meditation, you're about, oh, I've got to go and fucking do my job, and I've got to go and see the in-laws, and you get in your car and you're in the traffic, and then someone cuts you off, and oh goodness me, you're in hell again, aren't you? You're in hell. So it makes perfectly rational sense what I'm saying here. You know, where's Jesus? Where's Jesus when you're in the fucking traffic? Where's Jesus when an armed robber's enter your house and is going to slit your throat? What if fucking the armed robber does slit your throat? Where was Jesus? It's just ridiculous how the human being thinks. Absolutely preposterous. But you see, because they're very, very weak, they're very, very unintelligent, and they're very, very much in need of these saviours. That's why they've created them all over the world. They can't find the strength within themselves. They can't find the stars burning in their own solar plexus. Like I'm always speaking about, I'm like nuclear fission. I'm always creating my own mass of energy. And I've always had a massive amount of energy. And so we create our own reality by our thoughts. And even says that in here, truly I say unto you, beloved people, there is nothing about this world that you do not create. That's what it says in this book, and that's supposed to be the words of Jesus. And so if you ever got your heads around that you create absolutely everything, then it's a no-brainer, isn't it? And yet, I make these videos and I don't get a single fucking comment saying I get it exactly where you're coming from. Because you fucking don't. You're all fucking stitched up with the propaganda. You don't actually have the thinking capacity. Save this many out of 300, this many of you. And you're in the comments, and you're about the only ones ever in the fucking comments. Because nobody else knows where to fucking start. They just don't know where to start. They are babies, and they'll die babies. And this is it. Or Jesus would say, they'll die dead. They are the living dead, and they were never actually born, and they'll never actually die. They just pass through as dead or automatons. And anyone that's been indoctrinated into any of these silly stories, well, that's what you are. I wonder, what do you people think when you look at me, if you believe in one of these stories? Do you hate me? Do you want to stone me? Do you want to burn me? Like Giordano Bruno of the 1500s or whatever, because he says that the earth isn't the centre of the fucking cosmos, and God is within us all, and this and the other. They burnt him. They didn't want to listen to that. They couldn't stand that. The small-minded, little bigoted fucking morons. Not much different today, people. Not much different today. Look inside your own breast. Look inside your own minds. Look inside your own hearts. What have you got there? Have you got this fucking batty boy Jesus? Have you got Muhammad? Have you got Allah? Have you got Krishna? What the fuck's going on? You see, the sad reflection is there's no real human beings here. Very, very few. And even if you've got people that well, no, because it wouldn't work. No. So what I'm saying is, you have to be very enlightened. You have to be very educated. You have to be very aware. You have to be an old soul, I guess, before you're just not going to be embracing or believing in any fucking thing. You just don't believe. You don't believe. Because this whole fucking thing is premised on belief. Everything is a belief. I believe I'm holding the cup. What are you holding, Aaron? What are you holding? I believe I'm wearing glasses. What are you wearing? What's wearing? What's glasses? Just words, just concepts. How are these concepts meaningful in this dimension? Well, because we all agree that these things are called glasses or spectacles, and they help us see, and without them we wouldn't see very well. And so, well, one concept after another concept after another concept. And so, can't you see that this whole thing, you know, it's like, let's take things a little bit further, like a rocket going to Mars. You can very, very loosely have a concept of a rocket going to Mars, but what the fuck does that mean? What is a rocket? Oh, rocket, we all know what a rocket is. It's this tin can with fire coming out the bottom of it. That's the extent of what the vast majority of people would ever know about a rocket. It's like a metal penis with fire coming out the bottom of it, and it flies through the sky. Is that what a rocket is? You need to think again, people. You need to look at what you think you know, because you don't know any fucking thing. And then when you look at things like, what is a star? What is a star? It's a ball of fire. Really? Is that what a star is? I think you need to look into it a little bit more. Keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, keep reading, and every fucking day these so-called scientists will be coming up with a new story as to what stars are, and this, that and the other. We don't know anything, people. And so if you just come back from your fantasy and you look at the nuts and bolts, you look at the fucking bones of what you've got here, well, one thing that you can't deny is that there is an awareness within, and you can find this awareness within when you shut the fuck up and you go into your own closet, like Jesus said, and you just shut the fuck up, and then you will discover that there's awareness, and out of awareness comes mind, and out of mind comes everything else. Everything is born out of mind. Everything is mind. There's no physical matter in the cosmos. That's been established for over 120 years, and even people thousands of years ago were writing about that. There is no physical matter here. It's all Maya. The Hindus writing about Maya, Plato writing about Maya, any other fucking philosopher and spiritualist have all spoken, it's all Maya. But for those of you that are bored, well, I've got to go pack chickens today, otherwise I don't have any money, and I can't buy no food, and I can't do this and do that. Yeah. And, you know, oh, well, we have to work, don't we? Hello? Hello? That's just blown that one out of the water. We have to work. Just forget about what you think we have to do. This one doesn't have to do anything. He hasn't had to do anything for 16 fucking years. And he wouldn't have had to do anything before then if he didn't want to. If he didn't want to travel around the world and do this, that and the other. And so it's all perspective, and it's all created out of your mind, out of your consciousness. You build your world. I've built mine, and you've built yours. Only most of you don't know that you have built yours, and that you can't change it just by your thoughts, just by your applications, and just by directing your intention. Anyway, enough said today.